your podcast app. You'll see there's a discourse happening. Is this book a masterpiece or problematic? One's a lifelong diehard fan, the other's a first-time reader. Both are really smart and funny and attractive. Sweet Valley, Sweet Valley, titans and hierarchy. Sweet Valley, Sweet Valley, relentless focus on their bodies. Sweet Valley, Sweet Valley, what do they mean by all Americans? Sweet Valley, Sweet Valley, no sex, just titillation.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good afternoon to those of us on the West Coast, like me. How are you? I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Your hair is wet. I feel like I should acknowledge that.
Yeah, if you don't, I mean, we would be remiss.
Yeah, okay.
I recently popped out of the shower, so I'm fresh as a daisy.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Speaking of daisies,
Yeah.
you may or may not be aware that I have recently entered the world of cubing. I now identify as a cuber, and that to say I am learning how to do a Rubik's Cube. And one of the first steps is to quote unquote make a daisy. But I just want to say I've been absolutely loving it. I'm really proud of myself.
I love this.
And it's so much fun. Like I'm loving it. It's so much fun. And I feel like there's a whole world of once you start sort of philosophizing with this thing and getting into the whole like I don't know, there's a lot to be discussed and there's a lot to be unpacked with the cube. So
always. I love that you're kind of trying on new identities. You're stepping in kind of almost in a practice space, performing the identities that you will take on later in life, much like an adolescent learning to join the world of work, like this book.
Okay, Racing Hearts.
This was another classic Francine Pascal bait and switch. We think this is a book about whether Roger and Lila are going to get together. We think this is a book about whether Lila is redeemable in any way. Of course, it is not. As a first-time reader, I'm getting more practiced at reading them. And so I spend less time kind of thinking about what the book is going to be about. And I just jump into the book and then the book, so I think part of it is that because there's this form and this established form that I'm getting better at reading, I feel like there's less of me focusing obsessively on what's going to happen.
Well, on the finale of season 2 of And Just Like That, which aired last week, and this is not a spoiler, Carrie has a dinner party and does a little ritual where she makes everyone go around and say something they're letting go of because it's her last night in this apartment that she's had for 30 years. And so she's sort of letting go of her apartment and just goodbye to the apartment. She says, everyone go around, just say one word, something you're letting go of. And, characteristic of her, the sort of famous narcissistic sociopath that she is, while everyone else is allowed one word, she sort of ends up talking for a while. But ultimately, the thing that she decides to let go of is expectations. And it sounds like that's a little bit of maybe what you're experiencing, which is previously you're going and saying, and how does it end? And how does it end? And now what you're learning is that's not really the question.
Yeah.
Number one, because it's a serial format, but number two, because we are constantly being misdirected and sort of not really always understanding what it's about until we get into it and it being actually about these other things. And so, and the exploration of that is part of the pleasure, maybe more of the pleasure than the sort of prediction of the outcome. Yeah.
I think part of it is also, to be totally frank, like I trust Francine and Kate more now. Like I'm kind of in a let Jesus take the wheel space. Yeah, let's just quickly cliffhanger, only because I want to talk about the fact that the actual cliffhanger, it's almost nothing. Poor Roger, Elizabeth says to Todd, looks like he's been put up before the Fowler firing squad. What would Lila do if she ever discovered Roger's secret? She wondered. All her sympathy went out to him. Roger's crush on Lila was worse than hopeless. It was positively heartrending. Roger and Lila have big surprises in store for them in Sweet Valley High #9, Love on the Run. And I highlight that just because the cover you're going to show me is not going to say Love on the Run.
I think it must have just originally been titled Love on the Run, and then the name was changed to Racing Hearts. The thing I will tell you is that the tagline on the back is Love on the Run. Ellipsis. Okay. I think we should get to the couvert.
Oh, let's couve it. Okay. You know I'm going to freak out about this.
Yeah, I
For
know.
the first time in Sweet Valley history,
let it be documented.
We have two non-twin characters on the book. So we've got Lila.
Neither Jessica nor Elizabeth has graced our couvert this week. Furthermore, we don't even have blondes. We're stuck looking at two brunette-ass people.
Yeah.
Tell them what you're seeing here. What do we see?
I mean, fine. We see not blonde people. Let's start there. So we have Lila wearing kind of a pink striped blouse. She is crossing her arms in front of her, and she is staring out at the reader with kind of a tilted faced kind of look. We have behind her Roger, hair parted to the side, eyes intently gazing upon Lila, wearing a scoop neck blue t-shirt, a gray sweat blouse with the sleeves pushed up.
And the most important detail of this couvert, Robert, and tell him what it is.
His glasses are hooked into his blue scoop neck t-shirt, not on his face.
You forgot to say it's a ringer tee. It has a white trim.
Yeah, it is a ringer tee. I apologize, listeners.
And the glasses, of course, is an inversion of the classic trope. Men don't make passes at women who wear glasses. And here Roger has removed his glasses and therefore become visible as a sexually desirable mate. And we have a lot of moments in this book of, well, he's not actually that bad looking. And now that he's in the tracksuit from the back, I actually thought he was a real athlete and thought he was, and it's like this whole thing of like, does he look good or not?
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, there's also the idea that he's removed his glasses because when he looks at Lila with love, he is not seeing clearly. He has no idea who she is or what she's about or like any part of what a real relationship is. And so by removing his glasses, he is demonstrating the extent to which his sight is limited. He is short-sighted. He is making wrong choices.
100%. His love, quote unquote, for Lila is very much a fantasy. So similar, I think, to what we saw with Bill and his feelings supposedly for Jessica in the last book, Heartbreaker. Of course, Bill's supposed love for Jessica was really just a projection and a sort of breaking of his love and grief for his late girlfriend, Julianne. What is going on with Roger and what he may be projecting in his fantasy on Lila, I think there's a lot we can discuss there.
Definitely. I'm wondering how
vis-a-vis class dynamics and so on.
Okay. I mean, this is the book where class warfare comes to Sweet Valley, and I for one am ready for it.
Well, I think that happened in book 1 with Trisha Martin, which by the way, we haven't heard from again, which is kind of interesting, but
interesting. That's very true.
I just really quickly want to talk about hair part theory.
Oh, I knew. I mean, I made the biggest mistake of my life when I said on the couvert, his hair is parted to the side, even though you were going to talk about it anyways, weren't you?
Yeah, hair part theory is something that I've done a lot of research on. A left hair part draws unconscious attention to the activities that are controlled by the left hemisphere of the brain, i.e. activities traditionally attributed to masculinity. A right hair part draws unconscious attention to, oh, wait a minute. Oh, no. A man who parts his hair on the left is better, but he actually does have on the left.
Or the left.
I don't know.
I don't know. That's what's always
when people talk about left. Let me ask you a question: left brain, right brain. Which is it? Is it facing you or not? Because this is going to be the same as that.
Wait, left brain, right brain is your own left or right.
Okay, that means this is his left part.
So I should be parting my hair on my left side.
Yeah,
listeners, I'm doing it.
This is going to be cut because
although I don't want to seem more masculine at all. Do I seem more masculine? But then this is what's confusing is because you see me in a mirror. So now aren't I parted on your right side?
Okay. Men with left part is natural for men, usually works well for them, perceived as popular, successful, strong, traditional, can be out of touch with the feminine side of themselves. Examples, John Wayne, Tom Brokaw, John F. Kennedy. So, but I think what we see here is the same way that Roger took off his glasses, he's also probably has switched his hair part. He probably used to have a right hair part. because
no.
because it would create an uncomfortable image, can cause social shunning, sometimes leading to unusual or eccentric behavior perceived as atypical and radical. Can be okay if the man is very confident, attractive, or striving to be respected in non-traditional male role. Examples: Al Gore, Charlie Rose. No. He can't pull that off. He switched it. It's good he did. And now he's attractive. Okay. All right. And also, I just want to note that his body is more lanky than the guys we've seen. Like, he looks skinnier.
Yeah,
His
that's definitely
fingers
true.
are longer and skinnier. His face is much thinner. His Adam's apple sort of bulges out of his, like, he just looks skinnier.
Yeah, can you flash that at me? I think another thing that you might be responding to is the fact that his clothes don't fit him. Like,
they're too big.
His sweat blouse is too large. His blue ringer tee is too, I mean, that's why I kept describing it as scoop neck. I think it's just too big. I think we're supposed to read him as like ill prepared because, spoiler alert, readers, he's poor.
Okay, the tagline on the front. So on the back we had Love on the Run. On the front we have, can Roger melt Lila's icy heart?
I don't think Lila has an icy heart. I think she's stuck up and terrible. But like, is her heart icy?
Well, in the world of this, like, based on the way she treats people, yeah, you could think she has an icy heart. Like, I could see that making sense from that, but I take more, to me, it's more the thing of the misdirective, like, that just isn't what it ends up being about. It never ends up being about any kind of relationship between the two of them,
right?
And her icy heart melting. Oh. One of the themes that I did find interesting is like the relationship between Lila and Jessica, and how the pressure they put on themselves and each other limits and hurts both of them, and they can't get out of it. Like, I feel like part of what we see here, a little bit of like Lila's icy heart and Jessica's icy heart, is like she and Jessica sort of keep each other in this limited situation where like they can only date certain types of boys, and they can't let themselves open to other types of boys who may be short or poor or whatever. But,
or spoiler alert, young.
Right.
I guess I'm just prickly about the term icy heart.
Why?
To me, and maybe I'm wrong, Jessica is many things. Lila is many things. I don't think they're cold. I don't think they're like
Lila is. That's how Lila behaves. I don't think that's who she is internally. I think she has all kinds of vulnerability and whatever, but I feel she treats people icily. You know, she talks down to people. She puts on airs. She creates distance. I believe that is cold. I believe she has a cold demeanor to most people.
That's interesting. I mean, maybe I just didn't pick up. I mean, to me, it didn't read as icy. It read maybe more as stuck up.
We also just, I guess, haven't spent that much time with Lila yet. So I could see how for a new reader, a Lila versus a Kara Walker may seem interchangeable, but they're not. Sure. Either way, the book doesn't even think this is a real question. So
one thing that I'm so sorry, and you'll remember this, and I hope I remember this. Lila is the one who famously was shoplifting, showed ultras of vulnerability about her fraught relationship with her father. I felt like we made so much progress with Lila in that text, and I feel like we're starting over with Lila square one in this text. Does that resonate with you at all, or no?
I do think it's sort of an interesting order for us to see those things happen. Like, it may have been more intuitive for like this book to happen before we see that storyline, but I guess I also want to remind you that, like, while we saw the vulnerability of Lila, her peers didn't. Remember, she called up Elizabeth and said, "You're the only one I can talk to. You're my only actual friend." She couldn't even show her vulnerability to Jessica and Kara. So let alone is the public of Sweet Valley going to, at this point, see those sides of her.
That makes sense to me. Are we ready to move inside the book beyond the couvert?
I mean, we haven't talked about the title.
Oh, silly, beautiful, stupid Robert. We haven't talked about the title.
It's a good thing you got that face, okay? And it's a good thing you got that head hair.
Racing Hearts.
Couldn't get too far with this, okay? I got to, for me, it was, we got racing, you're running on the track.
Yep.
And then we got boop, boop, boop. The heart's going beep, beep, beep. The heart's racing because they're horny.
Okay.
Anything else here?
I've got something else. It's not good. Are you open to things that are bad?
Yes.
One of the main things for me about this book, this text, is about like the world of work and the ways in which adolescents intercede and practice in the world of work. And so Racing Hearts to me gives me a little like rat race corporate world kind of thing.
Okay.
It's not great though. It's a bit of a leap, honestly.
All right, we'll take it.
Shall we plot summary before we chapter one?
Okay, so here's what happens in Racing Hearts. Roger, who is poor and works secretly as a janitor to support his family, is very skilled and interested in running. However, due to his obligations, is unable to run the Barton Ames Memorial Race, a famous thing in Sweet Valley that would also have a college scholarship.
Roger thinks he has a crush on Lila, but realizes that Lila is superficial and terrible and actually falls in love with his friend Olivia and manages to run the race, win the race, and get a college scholarship. Everything is fine.
And this doesn't count as a sentence, but
no, this is extra sentential.
There is a B plot, which Robert has alluded to, which is Jessica having a short-lived part-time job at her father Ned's law office.
In many ways, I felt like Heartbreaker was about the past, was about like kind of, as you very thoughtfully pointed out, was about memorialization, was about kind of
grief.
This for me feels like a very forward-looking book. This feels like we are 15, 16, 17-year-olds on the precipice of a future, and we are thinking about what our future can be. And it comes up in like pretty obvious ways in terms of like college scholarship stuff, but that doesn't come until midway through the text. Even very early on in the text, we are presented with this idea that adolescents are interested in understanding how they will become adults and how they will begin to take part in the world of work.
Yeah, I totally agree. I enjoyed reading about that. And I enjoyed seeing, for example, Roger like making sort of very realistic kind of calculations about how to make decisions to achieve like basic security. So, yeah.
In chapter 1 of the book, we open with, Jessica, I've been looking all over the house for you. Elizabeth Wakefield told her identical twin sister. Mom wants you downstairs right away. She's making pancakes. We open with Elizabeth questing, seeking, searching for Jessica. And she can't find Jessica. Why can't Elizabeth find Jessica?
Because Jessica, is she standing in front of a full-length mirror? Yes.
Of
but
course,
in whose
always.
room today? Not hers.
No.
Not Elizabeth's. The parents.
She's
And
in her parents' bedroom. Okay.
Go.
We open with Elizabeth looking for Jessica and being unable to find her because she is looking for the Jessica she knows, a 16-year-old, very slender, very beautiful, sun-kissed golden blonde. And the Jessica that she finds is a Jessica trying on the world of adulthood, quite literally through clothing in her parents' bedroom.
In a chocolate brown suit.
She's wearing a brown suit, readers. Chocolate brown suit.
You know, last week in Dear Sister, we talked about Altazar's concept of interpolation, and Jessica continued to try and fail to kind of hail Elizabeth, and Elizabeth wouldn't respond to the call. And here, what do we have? Jessica, I've been looking for you. And Jessica doesn't, say, yes, it is I. She just stands before the mirror and says, do. So Jessica here is also renegotiating her social role.
Absolutely. And the way that it's made literal, she's standing in the mirror like always. She's wearing her mother's suit. I know brown's not my usual color, but I think it's a good color for business, don't you?
I also just need to talk about the first sentence because it's so fucking weird. Like, Jessica, I've been looking all over the house for you, Elizabeth Wakefield told her twin sister. Mom wants you downstairs right away. She's making pancakes. Like, the urgency doesn't match the scenario. And then what happens is they get downstairs and like they knew she wasn't ready yet, so they didn't start making the pancakes yet. And I'm just like, that's not an urgent reason that mom would need you. Why couldn't it be a reason mom actually would need her? Like, she can't find her keys, or like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Mom wants you downstairs right away. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's weird. No one would say that. Sorry, I'm stuck on this. So.
You're allowed to be stuck on it. I love when things don't make sense in these texts. I think the all over the house also is meant to remind us of their kind of class privilege and their status. Like, they
Never
have a house that's large enough. It's a split level.
Split level.
Those levels are not on the same level. They are on split levels. So you got to know she can look all over the house. Lila Fowler has that like kind of sprawling mansion. I bet if you were trying to find,
it's called Fowler Crest.
Fowler Crest, of course. I bet if you were trying to find Roger in Roger's home, it'd be pretty easy because Roger's home is smaller because he's poor.
By the way, in case you forgot, they live in a split level that you can search all over and still not find someone. Elizabeth then sat down on her parents' king-size bed.
Yep.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, even though she is wearing brown, the color did go well with Jessica's blonde hair, tan, flawless complexion, and the lines of the suit showed off the slender, shapely legs that were a mirror image of Elizabeth's own. But to say that Jessica wasn't the business suit type would have been the understatement of the decade. What's this all about? Elizabeth asked. Your role in the next school play?
Aren't we playing roles? Yes. This is not the school play. This is the work play. But yes, this is about my new role. Thank you for noticing that.
And later, of course, we have Roger saying, oh, I'm a hero. I need hero lessons. I don't know how to play that role. Go on.
We see Jessica kind of adopt a similar pose that she has adopted previously. Elizabeth's like, oh, what are you going to do? Are you going to the beach with Kara? Jessica says back, no, sister dear. What I'm trying to tell you is that I'm no longer interested in spending idle hours in the sun gossiping with my girlfriends. It's so juvenile.
A callback, of course, to the cliffhanger for All Night Long, which involved Jessica saying that she's no longer interested in the Pi Betas after the whole drama with Robin, and now I'm interested in hanging out with a college crew because the Pi Betas are so juvenile.
What's interesting here, of course, is that she is not worried about dating a college guy. Instead, she has decided it's time I stopped being so frivolous with my life. I should be thinking about the future. And in that very simple sentence, she kind of lays out the terms and the focus of this text. Sure, it's called Racing Hearts. Sure, it's about this boy runner, but it's really about how we think about the future. We as adolescents on the precipice of adulthood, how do we think about what is to come?
And part of, I think, what's going on here is, she's always reacting. And so in the last book, she was talking all this game about how she was going to be this famous Hollywood actress because she thought she was the one going to get scouted by Dee Gordon's producer father. And then when that didn't pan out, and then she also ended up getting sort of rejected by Bill, she needs a new thing. She needs a thing for people to be curious about her. Like she needs something going on. And so I think it's also interesting the way that she makes Elizabeth kind of pull it out of her, right? Like this book doesn't start with Jessica coming downstairs to breakfast in her brown suit and saying, guess what, guys, I have an announcement. Elizabeth's looking all over for her. And Jessica is sort of teasing and doling out this information in a very gradual way. And I think that's a lot of the pleasure she gets out of it is she wants the curiosity. She wants the mystery. She wants to know something that someone else doesn't know.
What's interesting additionally is the ways in which Elizabeth responds to this. Elizabeth says things like, isn't this a bit sudden? Last week you were ready to be an actress. Now you say it's something else. How do you know you won't change your mind and forget it all as soon as you go outside and see what a nice day it is? She says, I just can't help wondering if this new focus on a career is only something to occupy your time while you're between boys. All I can say is I'll believe it when I see it.
Which is all very unnecessary undermining. It's like, to what end? Even if this is like, it has been stated already that Elizabeth is aware of the fact that Jessica's feelings were hurt in the previous book, or that she's been feeling a little down or sensitive or rejected based on what happened. And even if this is something to occupy her time between boys, or it does last a week, or she isn't really, it's like, what's the expression I'm looking for? Like, what skin off Elizabeth's back is that?
Yeah.
Like, why?
Who cares?
Why does she need to challenge this?
And I think part of your question, why does she need to challenge this, I think gets back into our focus on who is who. Elizabeth is the practical one. Elizabeth one is the one who knows she wants to be a writer, which gets referenced a little later in this. Elizabeth is the one who's always kind of pragmatic and thinking about the future and doing the right thing. And now Jessica wants to step into that role, and Elizabeth is unwilling to cede that territory and is being pretty terrible.
And what we saw in Dear Sister was Jessica was starting to develop empathy and responsibility. And then in Heartbreaker, it seemed like Jessica sort of ditched all her empathy and kind of went back. And now Jessica's putting on a brown suit, taking on a part-time job, and potentially engaging in those more quote unquote Elizabeth like aspects of herself, which maybe she's experiencing also as actually authentic and enjoying. Yeah. And I think there is signs in this book that she actually has some interest in some of these things.
Yeah, I think it just speaks to, we're set up to believe, or I was set up to believe, that like Jessica is a monster and Elizabeth is a saint. And the more I read these books, it's like, Elizabeth, you suck. Like, let Jessica think about the future. Like, why do you have to be so undermining
Let her live.
And so mean? Let her live.
Let her live for once.
And then we get this moment where Jessica actually confronts her and says, thanks a lot, Elizabeth. I expected a little more encouragement from you. I thought you'd be thrilled that I finally decided to set some goals for myself. Isn't that what you've been trying to get me to do for ages? Well, yes, Elizabeth admitted. So why can't you believe I'm ready to start?
Listen to her apology.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Jess. I guess I'm feeling a little like one of the townspeople in the story of the boy who cried wolf. The boy who cried wolf, a wolf, a boy who cried wolf, there are actual stakes. Because if a wolf comes, there's a problem for the townspeople. Whereas Jessica crying interest in a professional world, there are no stakes for Elizabeth. There is no risk to her. In other words, she has nothing to lose in believing and supporting Jessica at her word. So this is not the boy who cries wolf.
It's so rude
Elizabeth,
and so mean.
Elizabeth, she's the boy who cries wolf.
Exactly. Thank you for that.
Okay, they go downstairs. She's freaking out about the supposedly cold pancakes. Turns out the batter, a special Wakefield family recipe, was on the counter next to the grill.
Something that was really interesting about that, so they come downstairs, and then we get this. Not wanting to disturb her mother, who appeared totally caught up in the editorial section, Elizabeth began to make the pancakes herself.
Famously, according to me, Elizabeth has a mother wound, Jessica has a father wound, okay? Elizabeth is always trying to be seen by the mom and feels invisible to the mother. The fact that she would not, quote unquote, disturb her reading the editorial section, who cares? For them to have a family breakfast together is very, very strange.
Okay, I was actually taking
on the role of the adult and the cooking. Yeah.
For me, it's like she's so threatened by Jessica in this suit that she's like, you can't play mommy. I'm going to play mommy. Watch me play mommy. I'm making pancakes for the family.
And you know what? She was probably disappointed that the pancakes weren't cold when they came down. She wanted those pancakes to be fucking cold so the mom would be mad.
She wants that. And yet Jessica knows what's really going.
So Elizabeth's making the pancakes. That's why she didn't see the expression on her parents' faces when Jessica dropped her bombshell. And I like to think of this as Discord's apple. Daddy, I have a big favor to ask, Jessica said firmly. I want an after-school job in your office, and I want to start tomorrow. And this is the end of the chapter. Mm-hmm. So this is intended to be, it's framed as dramatic.
Yeah.
This is a bombshell that she's asking her dad for some temp work.
When Jessica wants a job, she can just ask her dad, and then her dad is her boss. And I think later in the text, we see other people's kind of intimate working relationships. And we see that for other characters, that is also the case. But for Roger, for example, as our token poor person, his boss is not his dad. And they don't have that same relationship.
That's a fantastic point. Her saying, I want to start tomorrow. Roger's relationship with his boss and relationship with his job is so much more precarious.
Yes.
Yeah, let alone the fact that she's doing this as a stunt, right? And he needs to support his family paying rent. No, but I'm saying she doesn't need the money type of thing, right?
Okay. Yeah. So. Stunt felt a little bit Elizabethan.
Oh, come on. Dismissive. You know I'm the biggest Jess supporter.
You are a big Jess head over here.
No, I got a question for you.
Better answer now.
Chapter 2 starts and it's raining.
Yeah. Do you believe this weather?
First of all, I absolutely lost my mind when I saw that Kara Walker stayed home because it was raining.
I loved it so much.
It's like Kara Walker was so convinced the rain would aggravate her budding cold that she decided to stay home. So
love it.
It is, I think, important to note when there's bad weather in Sweet Valley, because almost every book we have a scene of Elizabeth driving and observing to herself, as she often did, how lucky she was to live in Sweet Valley and how the weather was perfect. And it's almost always perfect weather there. Not unlike Redwood City, California, where I lived, which the town slogan was, Robert, do you remember?
Climate best by government test.
Thank you so much. Redwood City, California, in a global climate survey, there was the top 3 identified climates. That was a tie for first place. It was someplace in the Mediterranean, some other place, and then the third was Redwood City, California. Okay. And that is very similar, I think, to the weather of Sweet Valley. And so when it rains, we must take note. When there's a heat wave, okay, in books 94 through 100, we absolutely must take note.
Cannot wait.
Let alone when there's a, I'm not going to say it.
Is there an earthquake? Is there an earthquake? Oh my God, is there an earthquake?
Oh my God, I can't. There is. The big one hits. I'm not kidding. The big one hits. The big one hits Sweet Valley. That actually did happen.
Wait. I hope everyone is safe, but I cannot wait.
a couple of things that the rain makes happen
Mhm.
is we get some discussion of Lila's frizzy hair. We
Correct.
get the track practice has to happen inside instead of out. But I was just like, what was your take on why the rain?
I don't have an answer. I don't have any analysis to offer. I'm sorry. Do you?
Okay. No, that's one of my
Oh, okay.
questions is that's one of the things I couldn't figure out was like, what did we get from it? Like, what was it a thing? What was it a way into? Like, on the one hand, it was a way into Lila's appearance and insecurities conversation vis-a-vis Jessica because they start talking about the frizzy hair, you know, and then it also sort of impacted the track racing. They had to go inside instead of outside.
But why would that doesn't really matter.
Yeah, like I was just like, why? But I feel like there must be a reason. I don't know. So anyway, maybe we'll figure it out.
Okay, we'll put a pin in that for now, I guess.
Let's do the description of Lila's appearance at the beginning of chapter 2.
Wearing the latest designer blouse and a pair of jeans that outlined every inch of her trimly shaped legs, Lila was the envy of many girls at Sweet Valley High. Even the rain hadn't hurt, adding a fullness to her wavy hair that Jessica could seldom achieve with her curling iron. Later on, pretty and smart, not to mention the daughter of one of Sweet Valley's richest men, Lila was never lacking for male attention. But in her opinion, few of them were good enough for her.
And Jessica shares with Lila that she's going to start working at her father's law office. And Jessica is kind of, again, delighting in the surprising Lila with this information.
There is a moment when they're going back and forth, and Jessica says, if you think I'm still upset over Bill Chase, you're wrong, Lila. I'm sure he and Dee Dee will make a lovely couple. And Lila says, my, aren't we big-hearted this morning? Are you sure the rain hasn't made your brain soggy? A week ago, you weren't in such a forgiving mood. Well, that was then, and this is now. Besides, what's wrong with wishing someone a little happiness? This was interesting to me just insofar as, in the same way that Elizabeth is trying to trap Jessica in the role that Jessica has played in the past, so too is Lila. And Jessica's like, I'm trying to move into the future. Why won't you let me into the future? And Lila is trying to hold Jess in the past.
And then Lila responds, work? Why? Why on earth would you do that? I know the concept of working is alien to you, Lila, but some people do enjoy it. I've decided I'd like to follow in my father's footsteps and become a lawyer. There's no better time than now to start.
Lila is supposed to be the one who seems out of touch here. She says, work? Why on earth would you do that? Like, clearly not understanding the purpose of work. She's so rich, she doesn't understand the purpose of work. But then Jessica's comment back is, I know the concept of working is alien to you, Lila, but some people do enjoy it. Which was also interesting to me because I think that's not necessarily supposed to make her seem out of touch. But it's like, hey, Jessica, some people work because they have to, not because they enjoy it.
Right, but that's not something that is going to have any purchase with Lila. Whereas the concept of careerism and being a professional woman and that having certain sort of social capital could potentially be impressive to Lila.
I agree with that, but I also think there's a reading of this where Jessica is similarly out of touch.
She's 100%. Yeah. No, it is that. We get the introduction of the Bart and the Bart dance. So, of course, another week is another dance. And this week's dance is the dance following the running of the Barton Ames Memorial Mile, a prestigious interscholastic race known informally as the Bart. And it is a race that the winner also receives a college scholarship.
For me, one of the big, it's not a plot hole, but one of the big things hard for me to remember. Oh, it's not going to be this. I don't think we are, because my big plot hole is I don't believe they call it the Bart when they could call it BAM, right? BAMM is way better than calling it the Bart.
I mean, I have so many issues with the Bart. Number one is that they call it the Bart when, like, why would they shorten it instead of acronym it? So yeah, I agree. They probably would have called it BAM. Also, because if it's the name of a person who's dead, I also feel like they wouldn't shorten his name to Bart. It's sort of weird. You know what I mean? I don't know. And also because the Bart is also the freaking subway in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Was it always called that though? I don't know. And then my other thing about the Bart is that it's sort of funny that, like, we're introduced to this memorial race in chapter 2, and it's called the Barton Ames Memorial Mile, but not until like the end of the book when the race actually happens do they explain who Barton Ames it was, and you just have to figure it out, which, like, yeah, we just assume it's someone dead. Yeah. And it turns out it is someone dead, a kid who was a runner or something.
Yeah.
But it's funny that that's just sort of how, like, has no context. But I also kind of like that because that's realistic. I need to talk about how Roger, like the reason everyone, even though he's never been on the track team, knows he's an excellent runner is because he's always running at full speed in, out of, and between his classes at school. It literally is the most insane thing I've ever heard. They had to swerve out of the way of Roger Barrett, who's running at full speed toward the locker area. And like, he's constantly described this way. And the way that it's explained is that because his schedule is so hectic, because he works like 3 to 9 and every day or whatever it is, like he has to run, he has to like, get out of school really quickly, which, okay, I could understand a few occurrences of him like rushing out, right? Or like he's always leaving early or whatever. Yeah. But it's not just on his way to work. It's like he's literally like running from his locker to class at full speed to where everyone knows he should be on the track team. Like, that's crazy.
It makes no sense.
And then how Lila calls him Bugs Bunny, and we don't find out until like 5 pages, and we're just like, why did you call him Bugs Bunny? And then later it's because he bugs her.
Yeah, it's like, I made a note of that. Like, Lila, that's not clever.
But it's funny because it's like we see him introduced as like he's very clumsy. He steps in a puddle and lost his footing.
Maybe that's why it rained.
Right, yeah. He's sliding on the floor. His glasses fall off. His books fall. The boy was a pathetic sight. His long legs stuck out of the cheap-looking jeans he wore, revealing his frayed white crew socks and well-worn sneakers. The force of his fall had caused his flannel shirt to open at the bottom, exposing a pale stomach that clearly hadn't seen the sun in years.
Gross. He's so poor he can't even like relax and go sunbathing like Elizabeth and Jessica. 2 very quick things. One quick thing is, do you remember at Brandeis that there was this girl who ran everywhere?
No.
You may remember her because she like dressed kind of in pilgrim style garb.
No.
Oh, there was a running pilgrim girl. Like, we would be walking.
And how can you do that in pilgrim clothes? Isn't that a long skirt?
It was like a long kind of black skirt. There was lots of ruffles, which just made it more noticeable. Like we'd be walking, say, from the castle to Perlman or whatever. And like there'd be crowds of people just kind of like walking at a leisurely pace. And she would be not in running clothes, in pilgrim garb, just kind of sprinting around.
But I need to understand, like, did it look like she was in sort of quote unquote like proper running form? Like, you know what I'm saying? Did she look like she was like a runner? Like she was like running?
No, it looked like she was just rushing, like boop, 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 like very brisk.
So she's just always in a hurry?
Always in a hurry running. It was very strange. Wow. I don't know if it's cultural. I don't know if there was a neurodivergence happening.
No, but this is fascinating because I was reading this thinking like, never in my life. Like, this is ridiculous, but you're describing this exact same thing.
So Roger falls over.
So they are basically mocking Roger. We're reminded that in the previous book, Lila had said, and everyone had heard, that she wouldn't go out with Roger if he were the last boy on Earth. So then Jessica is basically teasing Lila about Roger. But what's interesting here is that Jessica says maybe you should let him take you to the dance. Lila says, I'd rather date a fish. Jessica wasn't finished. You're just saying that because he doesn't drive to school in a Ferrari. He doesn't drive anything, Jess. I don't even think he takes a school bus. Jessica was enjoying pleading Roger's case. When she became a lawyer, she'd have to defend plenty of lost causes like Roger Barrett. There was no better time than now to begin sharpening her skills. But Lila, underneath the glasses and worn clothes, is a boy who needs the kind of things a smart girl like you can teach him. Why don't you give the guy a break and go out with him? So on one level, it's funny. It's funny that she's thinking about being a lawyer and defending lost causes like Roger Barrett and like making that comparison that like people you would, but also like, I do think there's something that is authentic or that she is enjoying in the defense of him and in practicing that. And I'm not sure if it's just the sort of arguing and logic involved and just the sort of debate of it, or if it actually has to do also with the like, it sort of gives her an opportunity to like engage in her empathy and take on the perspective, even if she doesn't necessarily 100% mean it or whatever, or even is partly doing it to tease Lila. Like there's something that she is connecting to about defending him, even if it's not completely genuine. And
it's what's interesting is we see kind of, I think pretty accurately, that she's trying on the perspective, but she's not all the way there because Lila says back, Jessica Wakefield, have you lost your mind? If you think he's so great, go out with him yourself. Jessica looked at her friend as if she suggested drinking Drano. The joke had gone far enough. It was one thing to defend Roger, quite another to date him. And so I just think that's like kind of funny that it's like she's experimenting with empathy. She's not all the way there yet. So like, let's give her time and space to grow. This idea that like we're very concerned with the cars that people are driving, and like the ultimate insult is he doesn't drive anything, Jess. We'll see later on that someone else, a potential love interest, has a similar problem because he also doesn't drive anything. And so I just thought that was like an interesting kind of book ending.
I love that. Wonderful observation.
Oh, thank you.
We then start to see more of Roger's friendship with Olivia Davidson, who, of course, is the arts editor for The Oracle, also has frizzy hair and is a bit of a kind of crunchy, kind of hippie stereotype. She likes to wear strange clothing and shop at thrift stores and this type of thing.
What's interesting about Olivia is Olivia does talk about how she too works, but the way that she talks about work is that she works in order to go shopping for clothes.
And she enjoys it. Working
Yeah.
at the museum and giving tours and lectures about the artist doesn't seem like work. The job is a dream come true. So it's also this careerism and enjoying of it, like Jessica talked about.
Yeah, it's like she's at a different level, obviously, than Jessica and Lila, because she does say, not to mention that it pays for the clothes on my back, but she's still removed from Roger. So Roger is working because he has to. And like Olivia is working, and it's closer to Roger because she's working to afford clothes, but it's still very different from Roger's experiences.
And I think we want to point out that even though Roger and Olivia are to some degree good friends, he has not shared even with her the fact of the job that he's doing, that he's working as a janitor and how poor his family is. And he's worried even to share that with her. I think there's a really interesting moment when he notices her new thrifted skirt. He says, "That's a new skirt, isn't it?" He wasn't sure he liked it, but it was in keeping with Olivia's offbeat sense of style. Olivia showed it off, the latest in chic from Martha's thrift shop. And he says, "Liv, when are you going to start shopping at the mall like everyone else around here?" And I think that's an important moment of just like, this is the beginning of Roger's journey, where like he's learning sort of acceptance of himself and like letting go of shame. But like his fantasy of Lila also has to do with acceptance and like assimilation or whatever, or like being seen as part of the unmarked mainstream, like normal, rich, whatever kids. And like he has that value now, right? And so he's putting that onto Olivia by saying, like, when are you going to start dressing like everyone else? So he doesn't appreciate her individuality right now, and he wants her to assimilate.
And it's also interesting because it's not even, he doesn't actually say, when are you going to start dressing like everybody else? He says, when are you going to start shopping at the mall like everyone around here? Like it's still baked into like consumerism and money and how we engage in commercial endeavors.
Then he puts his legs into high gear and runs up the stairs to his first class.
You got to run at all times. Roger, because he's poor, has to work twice as hard as everyone else around him. And I wonder if his running from thing to thing is kind of a metaphor for that as well.
Yeah, it's like a reflection of also his like mental state of like, he can't relax. If he's not doing something, he's getting to the thing he's supposed to be doing. Like there's no leisure.
Yes. Which is another reason why we spend a moment glimpsing at his untanned stomach. It also highlights like the lack of leisure. Chapter 3, we have some Bart talk. We're just like, Bruce is talking about running and training, and their whole goal is to get near a 4-minute mile.
Bruce, although he's not on the track team, is entering to prove he's the best athlete in school. And he's been, I think, practicing with the track team a little bit. Todd Wilkins, who famously is a basketball player, has never expressed interest in track. Oh, sorry, I don't know if it's here yet, but he ends up entering. But one of the dynamics we have going on here is Todd and Bruce tension between them, which I don't know if Bruce is even aware of, but Todd is a little bit snide to Bruce. And it says, Todd wasn't usually so testy, but when he was pushed hard enough, his anger ran deep, and he still had a good reason to hold a grudge against Bruce. The smooth-talking Bruce had tried to take advantage of Elizabeth Wakefield, Todd's girlfriend, when she'd been at her most vulnerable after an accident that had left her acting completely out of character. So, of course, in Dear Sister, Bruce attempted sexual assault of Liz, and as is typical, there was zero consequences for him. This is the most consequence we've seen, is Todd acting testy to him.
Right.
There has been no discussion of it. There's been no acknowledgement of it. There's been no follow-up of it. There's been no sense that anything needs to be said or done, or that any adult would ever need to get involved, or that this is behavior that like needs to be addressed in some way. And also that it's like, you know, Todd sort of defending Liz's honor, and Liz is sort of his property. So it's like an offense to her is an offense to him kind of thing. So we don't see this getting enacted through how she's responding to Bruce. It's how Todd's responding to Bruce.
I also think it's worth noting that perhaps Todd is so uncomfortable because he's in a locker room. He feels out of sorts. He wants to stare a little longer than he's supposed to. His eyes linger on Bruce Patman's lithe frame, etc. You know, usual gay stuff.
Todd says he's actually interested in running, and he says to Bruce, I actually could use the scholarship, unlike some people. Bruce basically says he's the school's only hope. He's going to be the fastest one. Tony Esteban is not going to win. No one else can do it. I plan to take home that trophy. And Todd says, I suppose it wouldn't bother you that you'd be depriving some guy of a college education if you win? Come off it, Wilkins. Nobody's run that race just for the scholarship in years, which I think is also kind of interesting, which is like this sort of ethical question of like, if the prize comes with a scholarship, is it still ethical to enter the race if you don't need it? Which I think is a legitimate like ethical question. I mean, I think what would be very nice is like that Bruce could enter it, and if he wins, since he has so much money, he could give that scholarship to someone else or something like that. Maybe that would be a way, but I don't know. I think it's a legitimate sort of interesting ethical question. And I think Bruce's answer of, well, no, there's all this other stuff. There's glory, and you get this trophy, and you're known as the fastest runner, and you do all this. And like, you know, it hasn't been just about the scholarship. And I think he's right, because no one mentioned the scholarship until this little aside just now.
Right. So, I think that's,
and I'm not a Bruce liker, but you know, he does have a point here.
He does have a point here. I mean, I think like what we really want, of course, is like free college for everybody. So we don't have to worry about running a stupid mile and the person who runs the mile fastest gets a college scholarship.
Yeah, of course. The context is insane, and this should never be the case, that your college education is contingent on how fast you run.
Yeah. One time also.
But within this world.
Coach
Schultz is a big character in this book, and your facial expression is showing confusion. Eyebrows are kind of knotted. What
There's just, they make such a meal out of Coach Schultz. Is he staying? Is he going? Does he have cancer? Is he getting fired? Does he want to retire?
All right, stop. Readers, on the level of plot. So Coach Schultz is the football coach. He is also the track coach. Bruce shares with people that his father told him that Coach Schultz is probably leaving Sweet Valley High. And Bruce has access to this information supposedly because his father was at a board meeting of the school, and Coach Schultz, I don't know, there's some pressure on him. They're not happy with performance. I don't know what. He made some tantrum. It seems like he's on his way out. Okay. So Bruce shares that with everyone, and the rumors start flying. Then rumors start circulating that it's actually, he has cancer, he's sick, he's dying, and that's why he's actually leaving. But in any case, there are all these rumors circulating that Coach Schultz is leaving. It has to do with potentially, and there's this sort of feeling of like, the glory or the like reputation of the team of the school sports is like a little bit at stake in this book, in the sense that like Schultz is apparently under pressure because the track team hasn't been performing. Anyway, in the end, it turns out he was just throwing a tantrum at the board meeting to get more money, which is something he does every year, and it works, and he's not going anywhere, and he wasn't sick. And this was another thing like the rain, where I was wondering, what was the point? Because the only thing that makes happen that I could find was Coach Schultz's supposed departure ends up being the sort of quote unquote reason that Lila Fowler is going to have this pool party. But ultimately, she even finds out the coach wasn't leaving, and she says, oh, okay, I'll just have it in honor of the track team instead. So we didn't need it as a plot device for that. I don't know why this whole coach story is in here.
I don't get it. That was what my furrowed brow was about.
Was it a lesson in rumors being wrong and don't spread rumors? Like, I was just like,
we've had that lesson so many times. Who cares?
Yeah.
I do wonder. I mean, I guess the only thing I have, and it's not good, but it is what I have, so I'm going to give it to you, is that this whole book is about like future and the world of work. And it's like about adolescents moving into the next phase. And so maybe we're seeing some of Coach Schultz as an adult and him moving into his next phase, although all of that is just purported and doesn't really happen. These adolescents are moving into the adult world, and they will therefore be displacing some adults who will then like retire and move on.
But I do think there is something to the fact that like in this book, particularly with Roger's storyline and with Jessica's storyline, we're seeing children navigating the world of like adult work and some concerns and that may go along with that. The whole Coach Schultz story is strange, but part of what it does do is we just get a lot of conversations and discussion about what might be going on for him in his job. And some of it ends up being true or not, but what it at least, I guess, does do is just bring that whole world of dynamics of adults having jobs and some of the stuff they have to think about to the kids. And like, part of that includes like, well, if you don't have a team of good runners, that impacts your job. And so that also raises the stakes for Roger or whatever, right? So, or for Todd or whatever. So
yeah, I think we've gotten as much out of it as I think we're going to. which I think is great.
Okay, so we get introduced to the character of Annie Whitman, and the way we get introduced to her is John Pfeiffer, who is famously the sports editor for the Oracle, asks Bruce, they're talking about the dance being the best part of the race, and Bruce says, I'm with you on that as long as I win. John says, sure, so you can play the big hero role you do so well. And again, later we get Roger saying, I don't know how to play the hero role. So who are you going to dance with? Bruce says, I haven't decided yet. What about you? John says, I don't know, Annie Whitman, maybe. The boys let out a chorus of whistles. Have you made an appointment? Tony questioned. I've heard she's booked up for weeks and isn't going to quit until she's had a go at every guy in school. So they just basically talk about her being a slut.
Yeah, it's so gross. She's well on her way. Charlie Cashman took her up to Miller's Point on Saturday. And from the way he looked yesterday when I ran into him, all I can say is he must have had a very good time.
Is she going to have a chance to work her magic on you? Tony asked. Bruce smiled slyly. Only if she's lucky. So Jessica shows up at her father's law office. She checks in with the receptionist and she is sitting and waiting and just sort of fantasizing about the experience that she believes lays ahead of her. She was glad she decided to become a lawyer. Law was an exciting field to be in these days, she reflected, especially for a woman. For a second, she thought of Joyce Davenport, the public defender on Hill Street Blues. Now, there was someone Jessica could admire. Glamorous, dedicated to her career, upholding the rights of others, yet still making time for romance. That's the kind of lawyer I'd like to be, Jessica thought. Though a second later, she discarded the notion. It was one thing to defend lost causes, but quite another to have to defend really grisly, dangerous criminals. Civil law, something more along the lines of her father's practice, was much better, she concluded. Conferring with other lawyers, including lots of handsome men, certainly had to be at least as exciting and a lot less dangerous. And then something interesting. She wondered what case her father would have her work on first. She found herself relishing the prospect of working by his side, helping him prepare his client's defenses. He spent a good deal of time at the county courthouse, and Jessica couldn't wait for her father to take her down there with him. So a couple things here. Number one, of course, Jessica famously has a father wound. One of the reasons so we see Jessica's doing this stunt, to quote me, for many reasons. And I think one of them is she enjoyed when the Percy twins came and Liz was being new Liz and dear sister. She enjoyed when her father said she was responsible. She enjoyed basking in the glow of Ned. And taking on this job and wearing the brown suit and showing up and doing work with him, she's actually, yes, part of her fantasy is being a glamorous actress and cavorting with handsome men, but part of her fantasy is also literally just getting to spend time with her father and help him with work and bond with him and have him see her in that light.
Yeah, I thought this was a really sweet, really relatable moment. Listeners, my father is a lawyer, and I never wanted to work by his side or anything, but I do remember him like bringing me around the courthouse when I was a little kid and feeling like, oh, like this is kind of a sweet, fun moment. And so I really, for as much shit as Jessica keeps getting over and over again for having the gall to have some ambition, like I really do love this for her and for us that we're getting to see this beautiful side.
Yes. And then her father appears. Ned Wakefield had always hoped one of his children would take an interest in law, but never in his wildest dreams had he thought it would be Jessica. Delight shone in his face as his daughter smiled up at him and nodded. Come along with me, honey, he said. Again, we have Delight shone. There's a lot of light. There's a lot of basking and glow, and who he sort of turns his light, who he shines his light on, and who he gives his attention to is, of course, very conditional.
Even in this moment where he's like kind of trying to be nice, he's still an asshole. Never in his wildest dreams did he think it was Jessica. You have 3 kids. Like, don't be such a dick.
But that's the whole point. He sees them one-dimensionally.
Yeah, he's a dick. He may be handsome, may have the body of an athlete, but a real dick.
When he's leaning over that table, when he's leaning over his papers, you can see his freaking muscles rippling. Yes. And then, unfortunately, Jessica's dreams come crashing down when her father introduces her to the office manager, Trudy. And turns out he's expecting Jessica to be doing freaking admin. Okay, she's going to be in a freaking back room posting letters and photocopying. Okay, not exactly what she imagined.
I love this. I think this is so relatable and so realistic. And like, this is one of the moments of the book where I was like, oh gosh, I wish I had been like a 16-year-old girl reading this book. Because it's just so sweet and silly to be like, she anticipates that she's going to have like a briefcase and she's going to be setting it down in front of the judge and be saying, Your Honor. And it's like, oh, sweetheart, you're 16. Like, you're not a lawyer.
Yeah, it's like the fantasy of what kids think work is versus the sort of mundane reality of actual work, which in some ways may actually bring her closer to understanding experiences like what Roger is going through and stuff like that. Like work is actually work. It's not fun always.
Now, of course, what is the first task that she is set to?
Collating and copying and stapling legal briefs.
She absolutely is making copies. She is creating doubles. Was that a real gasp or were you making fun of me?
No, that was real. My heart just fell out of my asshole for real, literally.
Well,
that was
get your
amazing.
heart back in your chest. But isn't that cool that like she's
You're
making
so
twins?
Freaking smart. You're so smart just making copies.
This book is doing it.
You're smart.
You know, what'd be smart is to put in that making copies thing from SNL that everyone hates.
I don't know what that is and I don't like it.
Wait, you don't know Rob Schneider's famous? He's like an office guy and he's like, look at you making copies.
I don't like this. I don't like this. I do like Rob Schneider though.
That's a bold statement.
And then Jessica, okay, is trying to find some freaking respite and joy in this mundane work. And she innocently turns on a portable radio to the local rock station to relieve the dreariness. And that absolute buzzkill Trudy marches in the office. Well, what are you doing, Miss Wakefield? Your father told me to come in here and tell you this is an office, not a disco. Jessica wonders what act of desperation had made her father hire this tyrant.
Whoa, you had a big jump. What did you jump?
Battle axe?
Battle axe. She calls her a battle axe. Where does Jessica know that language?
What is it? I mean,
like,
what
a
is
battle axe is like a kind of a slur that you use against women, basically exclusive.
What?
Yeah, it's not a slur is too strong a word. Sorry.
Okay,
it's like a negative term for women. Like a powerful woman is often referred to as a battle axe.
Okay, I fully didn't know that. Let's just see what Urban Dictionary like.
Urban Dictionary is going to be like battle axe is a sexual position where you're cutting at like blah,
a
blah,
woman
blah.
who is nasty, overbearing, mean, pompous, arrogant, selfish, busybody, aggressive, disagreeable, usually older, somewhat unattractive, standard. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, talk about internalized misogyny.
No, I didn't really know that expression, but I think I just assumed it was. I didn't know it was like gendered. I thought it was just like someone who is like harsh, but that's important.
Yeah, my thought is like, Jessica, where did you hear the word battle axe? Where did you pick up this misogyny, and why have you internalized it?
Probably from Ned, and
I was just thinking it probably was Ned, that monster, that muscular, athletic monster. I also thought this was just a really believable, understandable scene. Like she's trying to make her drudgery more enjoyable, and Trudy comes in and is like, "You can't do that." It all felt just very baby's first day at work in a way that I loved.
And then she's like, "Well, this also made me just be like, oh, I love her. Like she's being earnest here. Like she's actually interested, and she's trying to find ways to make this interesting." She's like, so she finishes the copying. Before giving it to Trudy, she decides to take a look at some of the documents, figuring that's how her father expected her to learn. From the wording at the top, it seems to have something to do with real estate, but when she starts reading it, the language is so convoluted it gives her a headache. And then it says, this was law, she thought. Where was the excitement of court cases, the challenge of defending people? And realizes she doesn't want to probably keep doing this. But yeah, I also liked that because it's like, okay, well, at least if I have to do this drudgery, like, let me take what I can from it and actually read the stuff I'm copying, but you can't even read it.
This is so natural. Of course, a 16-year-old girl thinks that, like, law is exciting and interesting, and she is surprised when it's all, like, boring paper pushing.
Then we get the introduction of a hottie called Dennis. So Jessica's going to the elevator because she has to go on an errand to the office supply store. She's trying to think of excuses of how she's going to break the news to her dad that she wants to quit this gig after one day. You new here?
Lost in her scheming, Jessica was startled by a voice. She turned around to see where it came from, and definitely liked what she saw. Over 6 feet tall, with wavy golden hair and smiling brown eyes, the boy who'd asked the question was leaning lazily against the wall. Yumbo. I'll have what she's having.
Dennis meets Jessica. They start flirting. She tells him that she is working here. He says that he's working part-time at his dad's ad agency across the hall from Ned's office. He says, how does it feel to be a working woman, training for the secretarial life? Oh no, Jessica said, letting the fire from her blue-green eyes emphasize her words. I'm planning to be a lawyer. Then he's impressed that she has ambition. He says, I hate girls who think planning ahead means picking out a new bathing suit to wear to the beach. And she's like, I know what you mean. So she's, now in a thing of performing this, I'm not of that type, I'm of this type, and she's kind of seeing that this is what he likes and what he's interested in, so she's kind of leaning into that. They talk about how fathers are good for that, which is fathers are good for giving their kids work opportunities. Again, Robert, as you pointed out, a contrast with Roger's situation. And then I think what's really a wonderful thing that happens is that she says, I know everyone at Sweet Valley High. Are you in college? And it says, there was a time when Jessica might have fibbed and said she went to Sweet Valley College if she felt it might make a good impression. But lying about her age had once gotten her into big trouble with a boy, and she wasn't about to make that mistake again. It was one of the few areas where she believed honesty was the best policy.
I also love Jessica like learning a lesson. This idea that she had a bad experience, she's learning from it, she is growing.
To distinguish, we absolutely are not saying that like that bad experience was the fault of her not being explicitly honest with Scott about her age.
No, gosh, no. I perish the thought. She is like, I'm trying on the clothes of my mom. I'm working through what it would mean to be an adult, but I'm not going to lie and say I'm farther along in that journey than I am, which I think is really interesting. They have kind of an interesting give and take. He says, are you new here? And she basically says, like, what makes you think I work here? And he says, I think very interestingly, no pocketbook. I don't know of any girl who'd be walking around here without a pocketbook unless she had it stashed away somewhere in an office drawer. And I just found that so perceptive and so interesting. So I was primed, as Jessica is, to think that Dennis is like older and mature and like kind of really, really insightful and knowledgeable. And then Jessica has this kind of, to me, very interesting response, which is, how do you know so much about feminine habits? Or do you keep a pocketbook hidden away too? There's this kind of intimation that to be observant, to look upon women and understand their habits, to be perceptive into the world of womanhood, marks a man as inherently feminine or less manly. She immediately says like, oh, or do you have a pocketbook too? Like, oh, are you a little fairy? And I say that as someone who is proudly a little fairy.
Yeah. And I think like what we see about Dennis, and we don't know this yet, but what we see even just on this first meet is that he's extremely perceptive, and that gives him an air of sophistication, right? And so he notices what working women dress like or whatever, right? Like he notices what it is to be a woman in an office and how to communicate with them or how to interact or what the kind of signifiers are. He's becoming very well versed in that because he's also playing a role, right, that he's not really in, which is he's, I think we said in the plot summary, pretending to be older than he is, but well, not necessarily pretending, but not volunteering the information, letting Jessica assume maybe. But so one of the ways he does that is she says she's Jessica Wakefield, and he says, not the Jessica Wakefield, daughter of Ned Wakefield, attorney at law. So you read office signs. I'm impressed, Jessica said, a teasing note in her voice. So first of all, he was literally perceptive in the sense that he clocked the name on the sign across from his dad's agency. But number two, he may have also in some way perceived about her that she's the kind of person that would respond positively to someone saying the Jessica Wakefield kind of facetiously. It's a joke, but she'll still like it.
So much of the world of work is just like getting people to like you. And so they'll do what you do or not bother you when you don't do what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. Or like playing a role or fake it till you make it or seeming like you know how to do your job. It's sort of like the aesthetics of working.
Yes, exactly.
Like knowing how to say things like, yeah, fathers are good for that. Like I've had so many jobs from fathers. Like,
which is such a weird thing to say. How many fathers does Dennis have? Just to be clear, it's fine to have more than one father.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't think it's the position of this podcast to stand position either way on that. I mean, certain things are left up to the states. States' rights.
Listeners, please remember that Pardo is Canadian. And so if we pressed her even for a second on what states' rights really have entailed in American history, who knows where we'd get?
Well, I know where we'd get. Racism. White supremacy.
Always a good guess when talking about America.
Okay. But I do think that him saying that fathers are good for that is strange. And it was meaningful in at least two ways, right? One of which is the reinforcing of the class privilege assumptions here and experience that him and Jessica have had in contrast with someone like Roger. And then number two is also the like speaking in generalizations about work. Fathers are good for that. That's just a truth that we in the working world know. I'm mature. Yeah. All right. So chapter 4, the rain has passed. It's a sparkly clear horizon now.
It's a perfect day for the race trials. And everyone was excused from first period class to cheer on the participants. Are you fucking kidding me, Francine? Have you ever been in a high school? We're all excused from first period class to watch 8 boys run around the track for 5 minutes? Are you kidding me?
Okay, I knew you weren't going to like this because in
You're
last
right.
book you got really mad about how they all got excused from class to go to the rehearsal, the DDs. But I didn't care then and I don't care now, which is to say, like, that doesn't bother me.
With an arrogance born of years of practice, Bruce Patman strutted slowly out of the dressing area and onto the track. His brand new red running shorts were short enough to expose nearly the entire length of his long, muscled legs, while his white sleeveless t-shirt emphasized his sleek, tanned arms. He had the look of a winner, and with the utmost confidence, he warmed up as the crowd continued to grow.
So Elizabeth is sitting with Enid and Olivia and Roger watching. Elizabeth says to Roger, "You want to be out there, don't you?" And he quickly responds, "No, not me. I wouldn't want to parade in front of my underwear in front of these people." Who would want to do that? And she's like, "Only someone who might want to prove he's the fastest runner." He says, "No, I'm not interested. I'm not interested." Elizabeth reminds him that there's a scholarship. Olivia says, "Roger, you know what? Maybe you should listen." Lila decides to pitch in. She says, "I've seen the way you run around campus. You're fast." And I guess like her goal here is just, I guess, goad him into doing it to make what she thinks is going to be make a fool of him, or to just even embarrass him at all, even if he doesn't do it. He has a realization. It says, at the moment, he meant nothing to Lila, but if he ran and won, or at least beat Bruce, there was a chance of changing that. He wouldn't have to run in the final race and risk his job, but if he had the honor of placing in the trials, it might help open Lila's eyes. So at this point, the assumption is he's not going to be able to run in the race because Pendergast, his boss, has told him he cannot have time off. So now he's deciding, well, let me at least see if I can place in the trials to try to impress Lila. He runs down and tells Schultz that he's going to run. Coach Schultz says, "Is that your running outfit, boy?" And in stark contrast to Bruce's shiny new outfit, we have Roger's faded army fatigue pants and red t-shirt. Chapter 5 starts and we get Bruce
being a dick,
just bullying Roger, just making a continuous stream of rude comments. And Roger is, of course, motivated by his haters. He says nothing. In a way, he was glad Bruce was making fun of him. It gave him even more of a reason to try his best.
So then we're just running. There's lots of running talk. This book has a lot of like people describing people running a mile, and listeners, describing people running a mile is not that interesting. I'm happy to just jump to the end, which is tortoise and the hairstyle kind of Roger ends up winning.
Yeah, I wrote down the same thing.
It's interesting that the nickname for Roger is Bugs Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce is described, it says, like a jackrabbit, Bruce Patman shot to the front of the pack. And then Lila chuckles, "Look at old Bugs. It'll be a miracle if he even makes it around once." And there's just an interesting juxtaposition of like the fast, speedy jackrabbit versus the cartoonish, laughable Bugs Bunny. They're both bunnies.
Well, and the hair. Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Roger wins the race, places first in the trials. Lila comes, gives him a big hug, and suddenly likes him, similar to Jessica after Bill Chase. Roger, similar to how in Heartbreaker, Bill Chase, when he was in the fantasy of Jessica, was treated Dee Dee poorly, his true friend and should-be girlfriend. Roger is dismissive or not attentive to Olivia, who is his true friend, now that he's in this kind of Lila fantasy, and Olivia is sort of starting to retreat now that she sees him kind of snuggling up to Lila. Elizabeth tells Roger, "Face it, Roger, you're a hero." And he says, "Do you know anyone around here who gives hero lessons? I've never played the part before."
Chapter 6, Chrome Dome brings Roger in and congratulates him and says, "You set a school record," and kind of lays out the stakes for why this matters so much. He says, "I don't have to tell you how important the BART is. Big press coverage, and no one from Sweet Valley has won in years. You're our only hope, Roger. We're counting on you." Which seems fucked up for the principal of the school to say to this kid. But the principal also notices that he's wearing the same clothes and ends up giving him a sweatsuit. Roger's eyes opened wide. He'd seen the suit many times in the school store and had always longed to have one just like it, but coming up with the $30 it cost was next to impossible for him. Pardo, do you have a guess at how much that sweatsuit would retail for in 2023 if it was $30 in 1984?
$150.
$88. So, I mean, still like an expensive thing.
Oh, very.
Which makes him feel uncomfortable. And he's like, I don't know. And then the sweatsuit becomes kind of like a marker of Chrome Dome and the community's expectations on Roger. And Roger spends a lot of time later in the book being like, I should give back the sweatsuit. I can't keep the sweatsuit. I can't run, so I shouldn't keep the sweatsuit.
Shedding his faded fatigues and ragged t-shirt, he tried on the new sweats. They couldn't have fit any better if they'd been custom made. And with the bright red Sweet Valley High emblem, he truly felt like a winner. He ached to savor the feeling as long as he could.
One thing that I do like that we get from the text is that Roger does seem to be one of the few people in the text who understands the role of class and money in society.
Mm-hmm.
Chrome Dome is trying to say, like, if you could break 4 minutes, it would be huge. Do you know what I'm talking about? Roger knew only too well. The BART could be the first rung of a ladder that could lead to the state track finals, the NCAAs, the AAUs, perhaps even the Olympics. Could. Perhaps for a boy like Bruce Patman, who had the time and money to devote to nurturing his talent. Not someone like Roger, who had to retire from racing even before he got started. What good was talent when you couldn't develop it? I just think this is such a great, like, incisive class analysis from Francine and Kate. Like, this idea that they're recognizing, hey, like, we have this sense of meritocracy in America. That institution, like the coach, can crumble. Like, that's bullshit. You need a lot of money in order to nurture the talents that we pretend are honored in a meritocracy. I love this.
100%. And when we talk about access and class privilege in sports, certain sports requires more class advantages or more just money. For example, skiing versus, for example, playing basketball. You could just pick up basketball and anywhere on a public court, you just need a basketball, right? Track is and running is something that one might think you're just running. You can run anywhere. You don't really need, you got a decent pair of sneakers. You don't really need much more. And what he's saying is it's really not that simple. Even with something like running, not only do you need the shoes, you need the sweatsuits, you need the acceptance into the group to be able to like be part of this community. And you also, of course, need the time to train.
Yeah.
Which he doesn't have.
Yeah, I just thought that was really, really
wonderful.
Thoughtful. Now that he is in the drag of an athlete, all of a sudden people are noticing Roger. Now there's a class A bod, Lila said, admiring the back of the lean, tall boy dressed in a blue running suit. You can't even see his face from here, Jessica pointed out. But I can see even in those baggy sweats that everything's in the right place.
Wonder who he is, Lila asked, then gasped as he turned around and headed for the cashier. Good grief, it's Roger. Good grief, it's Roger indeed.
Mm-hmm.
In his new outfit, Roger fit in well with the rest of the Sweet Valley students. He didn't look different at all. This is so heartbreaking. It's just like, that's all these kids want, is to be undifferentiated from each other and to be unmarked and to just fit in.
Can I read you 2 quotes that Lila says about Roger? And can you tell me if anything jumps out at you? You know, that guy is kind of cute when you think about it. I was only kidding around with him after the race, but you might have a point, Jess, about the value of hanging out with him for a while. And then it's like Liz is always saying, I'm too quick to judge people by their appearances. I should have known that underneath those grungy clothes was a guy worth knowing. Anything jump out at you with the way that Lila's speaking about Roger?
What?
For me, it's the use of the words value and worth.
Yeah. Yes.
The way that we're kind of placing attraction within this rubric of economy. Now that he is wearing an expensive sweatsuit he couldn't afford himself, now there's value. Now he's worth knowing. There's just something like the language. Francine never, is never sloppy with her language. She's choosing these words around money to highlight the role of money in their relationship. We do get this note about Roger. His mom had a heart ailment that forced her to retire from one of the assembly line jobs at one of the Patman factories. And there's just this kind of, again, focus on how people get jobs, what people do for work. And like, Bruce doesn't have to work because of who his father is. Bruce's father has created a work environment that suffocates Roger's mom to the point where she can't work anymore. It like calls to mind Dennis's line, it's good to have fathers, etc.
Let's go back to Jessica and Dennis, chapter 7.
Yeah, please. I'm obsessed with this. Can I just read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
At 4:30 in the afternoon, Trudy handed Jessica a small stack of documents. 2 copies each. That was my kind of Battle axe.
Battle
Sorry.
axe.
That was my battle axe drag. Jessica had been anticipating this moment the entire day. It was the start of phase 2 of her plan to snag Dennis. Shortly after her arrival at work, when Trudy had been on her coffee break, Jessica had opened up the copier and turned off one of the switches. But Trudy would never know that by the totally innocent gasp that came from Jessica when she pressed the button and the machine wouldn't start. It's plugged in, Jessica said. The paper bin's full, too. I don't understand what's wrong. This is so fucking brilliant. I love this sabotage.
So she sabotages the copy machine so that she can have an excuse to exit the office to supposedly go to the copy store, but Jessica acts like she is struck by inspiration, says, Trudy, why don't I just go to the ad agency across the hall and use their copy machine? Trudy says that's a great idea. Of course, an excuse to go see Dennis.
Of course.
What happens with Jessica and Dennis is they hang out, they're having fun, they're making out, they're flirting, but she starts realizing that it's like only in the office. Like he doesn't want to hang out on the weekends or whatever and doesn't suggest going anywhere else. Jessica's looking forward to being able to eventually bring Dennis to meet her friends and kind of show him off. Lila is frustrated that she's having a hard time kind of pinning Roger down and is interpreting it as he's playing hard to get, or she's sort of confused, and doesn't, of course, know that the reason he's never available is because he's always running to work. Coach Schultz starts talking to Roger about, like, how come you've not been coming to practice? The coach says, like, I really want you to put the effort. You know, the scholarship is really important. I'm thinking about how this can help you, and you're letting it slip through your fingers. Don't you want to go to college? A full scholarship can make all the difference. You're throwing away your chance. And then Roger's thought process I thought was really interesting. Roger knew the coach was right, but even the grand prize of a full scholarship would be useless if he lost his job. The way Roger figured it, with his good grades, he stood an excellent chance of winning a scholarship anyway. But he needed the money from his job right now to help pay his family's bills. Winning the race wasn't a sure thing. If he took the chance of losing his job and ended up losing the race too, he'd wind up with nothing. By not running in the race, at least he wouldn't be any worse off than he was now. This is very realistic and very smart calculation that he's made.
This feels like really reasonable, not impulsive, not 16-year-old logic. Like he feels developmentally advanced in the ways that he's taking on kind of the tasks in front of him with a maturity that is beyond his years.
And I think what it's also showing us is that crafting a future and planning a future sometimes is a privilege. And that he doesn't have the privilege. Like he'll worry about college later and hopefully he'll get a scholarship. He needs to survive right now. Like his family needs to pay rent. And so like his job, even though it doesn't give him any potential for any sort of long-term, you know, I don't know, career advancement or success, it is giving him cold cash now. And that's a sure thing. Elizabeth has been skeptical of Jessica's explanations of why she's working late and just the fact that she is still continuing to do this job at Ned Wakefield's office at all. Elizabeth is so confused by it, thinks it must be a boy. Elizabeth went to spy on Jessica. She saw Jessica with Dennis, and then she sees Jessica see Roger being a janitor. And then Elizabeth blackmails her. She says, I know you're going to run and tell Lila about Roger being a janitor, so you two can have a nice little giggle. So why don't you go ahead and not do that? And in return, I'm going to not tell Dad what's going on between you and Dennis. And what you've really been doing there at work, when he told me he was organizing his filing cabinet. Jessica thinks she's using one of my very own tricks to get me. And then Jessica, brilliantly, realizes that she can figure out a loophole, which is she doesn't actually care if Lila right now knows about Roger being a janitor. Her ultimate goal is to just sort of one-up Lila and sort of be able to publicly present Dennis and kind of look better than Lila looks. So she orchestrates this idea and encourages Lila to set up. She says, Lila, here's how you can get Roger. He may not like ask you to the dance, or he may not agree to go to the dance with you right now, but he's not going to turn down something related to track, especially supporting Schultz. Schultz, as we know, is on his way out. So why don't you plan a pool party for after the track meet? It can be in honor of Schultz, and then the dance is right after that, so you guys can just go to the dance together. Like, so it's like if she can't tell Lila about Roger being poor, she's like, well, the next best thing is I can help them get together. And then ultimately it will be revealed, and ultimately she can show up with Dennis at the party.
Okay, I think that gets us out of chapter 8 and into chapter 9.
Yeah, I just want to read the scene where Jessica's imagining how things are going to go at the pool party. Right in the center of things would be Lila, making sure everyone was aware that Roger was the object of her affection. Then, as the hors d'oeuvres were being passed around, Jessica could casually mention to Kara how nice it was that Roger got time off from cleaning toilets to come to this affair. Within minutes, everyone would be looking at Lila strangely, and she'd try to discover why. Soon she'd be off hiding in embarrassment, trying to figure out how to get out of this one. That would set the stage for Jessica's introduction of Dennis and her taking over as star of the party. Olivia, meanwhile, has called Elizabeth and told her that, Roger is planning not to run and this problem with Mr. Pendergast, and Liz starts thinking, how can I help? Roger is going to bring his sweatsuit back to Coach Schultz, and on the way bumps into Lila, and she's like, what are you doing? And he just tells her the truth, which is about working as a janitor. And she says, you're a cleaning boy? And he says, I prefer the term janitor. And then he gives a speech.
He gives a speech, an unexpected feeling of pride coming over him.
We're not all born rich. I don't like being poor any more than you'd like it. That's why I'm working my fingers off at this job. All that talk about wanting to be a doctor is true, Lila. I want that more than anything. And one way or another, I'm going to make it. If it takes missing the BART, it's a sacrifice I'm prepared to make. I don't need the prestige, but I do need the money for my job. His integrity was admirable, but she wanted nothing to do with it. And then she basically runs away. So Roger goes to Schultz. He tells him, I can't run the race because of Pendergast. Coach says, oh, actually, he called me. It's fine. Turns out he's a sports fan and went to school with the guy who set the last record. He says, don't worry. You can have the day off to run the BART. And also you can have an extra hour every day before that to train with me. He's like, oh, thanks, Schultz, for explaining that to him. And he's like, thanks, Schultz, I guess you called him. And Schultz is like, well, actually, I guess someone else wanted to help you because he called me. He says something to Schultz about sorry, you're leaving. And Schultz is like, what are you talking about? I'm not. And that was all fake rumors.
Roger walked out of the coach's office ready to believe in Santa Claus coming down the chimney and in the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy too. True, he had his work cut out for him, but he felt as if a huge burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Even the way that the language of this is discussed, we get these kind of glimpses of maybe there is true social mobility. Maybe Roger can ascend the social hierarchy. Maybe he can work out his job so that he can practice. Maybe he can even get a college scholarship. And in the same breath, it's described in the same way as Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy. And I think it's just really interesting that there's these hints and promises of institutions crumbling. And yet we see that that's actually a fantasy. Chapter 10, Roger's super excited that Liz's dad did all of this. He ran up to Elizabeth Wakefield and gave her a big kiss. Thanks a million, Liz, he said. Todd Wilkins, sitting next to Elizabeth, gave him a funny look. Hey, buddy, that's my girl. He didn't seem really angry, though. Todd, that was merely a kiss of gratitude. Because of your girlfriend, I'm going to be able to run on Saturday. Huh? Is this a kiss on the lips or a kiss on the cheek? What is a kiss of gratitude? Why is Elizabeth's voice notably absent from this in terms of both consent and how she feels about the kiss after it happens?
Yeah, for sure. And it's consistent with Todd treating her as property the same way we saw earlier in the book. That's my girl. That's my girl. Yeah. Same in Dear Sister. He said, that's not my Elizabeth. That is my Elizabeth. And then being angry at Bruce because he, damaged her property or whatever, his property. And then I also, when I read about him giving her a kiss, I wished it would have just said on the cheek. It was so strange that it didn't. And it was unfortunate that we had to go through that thought process. But I'm just going to go ahead and tell myself it's on the cheek. And then he's like, Schultz told me someone spoke to Pendergast. It must have been you. And she says, well, it was actually my father who convinced him. And Roger says, well, that's funny. I never thought Pendergast was such a sports fan. Elizabeth looked stunned. Sports fan? Ha. Did you know, Roger, that there's a state law that requires Pendergast to give you vacation time? Not to mention sick days. He had to give you the time off, as I'm sure Dad pointed out to him. Sometimes it pays to be a lawyer.
How deeply sad it is that Roger is oppressed in a system where if you don't know a lawyer, you just get wage theft and taken advantage of. Roger
basically goes and finds Olivia, and he has had this realization. It's like he's put his glasses back on and seen that, Olivia is his true friend and really cares for him. He says, I've been so dumb, Liv. We're both pretty unconventional. And I guess I used to think we were friends more out of self-protection than anything else. Mm-hmm. But you've always been loyal. You're always here for me. I'm ready to tell you that there's always been a little part of my heart that belonged to you. I'm ready to give you all of it if you're willing to accept it. And then Roger is about to go tell Bruce that he's actually going to run in the BART. Olivia is struck with a sneaky scheme, which
I
is
love this.
let's not tell him. Why don't you practice in secret? You'll still be registered and plan to enter the race, but don't tell Bruce, and let it sort of get around school that you're not running, and coach will probably support it as a strategic move to like let everyone think that you're not running. Ooh, this is now connecting me something. Schultz, after this whole rumor circulates that Schultz is out, Schultz then conspires with Roger in a rumor that Roger's out. And the thing about how like Schultz initially like did his temper tantrum to sort of threaten to leave if he didn't get his money is maybe like he sort of encouraged some of those rumors. Like in the end, when he says like, oh, that was so ridiculous, like this is my temper tantrum I do every year. But at the same time, he kind of may have been, he may have been doing a bit of a power play more than we realized. And maybe he fed into those rumors more than we initially thought. And in the same way, it's like coach knows how to use rumors to get what he wants. Like first he got money from the board, and now he's going to, and Olivia is correct in thinking that coach is going to go along with this rumor that Roger's not playing to sort of get everyone else to have too low expectations.
I love that idea. I think that it does make way more sense that coach is a little bit in on the rumors, because if everybody knows he's always just throwing a temper tantrum, it no longer works. We need this kind of belief.
Right. But then he tells them like, no, it wasn't. It's like, so he's doing rumors of like pretending he's not doing rumors. Sneaky.
I love it.
Yeah.
We get Jessica and Dennis in the office, and basically Jessica finally is like, what is going on with us? Why don't we ever leave this room? And I like that Jessica's straightforward and direct. And he says, I'm perfectly happy about the way things are going, aren't you? And she says, no, I'm not, Dennis, which is why I'm bringing this up. Yeah, I get the feeling you're not being entirely straightforward with me.
And how much of a contrast to when she was with Bruce and unhappy with Bruce and couldn't articulate her displeasure. And of course, it's a different situation. She felt unsafe with him, or there was this mental kind of abuse going on. But yeah, I also found it really, really satisfying. I really enjoyed Jessica sort of just being direct with Dennis and explaining her frustration. Before we get to the sort of reveal of Dennis, and I think we already said in the plot summary, but I was curious, like from the perspective of not having read this before, we're basically being set up for most of the book that Dennis has some secret, right? There's something not kosher going on with him. He only wants to hang out with her at work. He doesn't seem to want to go in public with her or take her places, something in the milk ain't clean, as it were, right? And so did you know what it was? Did you have suspicions? Did you think it was something different?
So my thought was that he was poor. I thought that I should have known we didn't have space for two poor people in one book. But I thought the whole reveal was going to be he can't afford to take her anywhere. So that's why they have to always be in the office.
Yeah, I think I thought it was like, something of like poor, or also just like that he's faking the job and doesn't really work there. Because like so much of the thing with him was like his fluency in talking about work, and the fact that he like works at his dad's office, and like, isn't that what dads do? And like, see, the name's Creighton and my name's Creighton. And like, I don't know. I thought there would be something about like he doesn't actually work there. But anyway, that's not what it is.
That's not what it is. What it is,
he doesn't have a car, not because he doesn't have a car, because he doesn't have a driver's license, because he is 15. A lowly sophomore.
I just turned 15, not even 15, about to be 16.
Ew.
And I like that Jessica has like, just like I thought maybe he was a poor, she thinks there's another girl, your weekend sweetie. And she's like, I'm not willing to do this. And he is like, well, I told you I had a car, but I don't. And Jessica rolls her eyes. Is that all? That's no big deal. Can't you borrow your dad's? Again, we've got this kind of like patriarchal father, like
not.
And then we find out that he just turned 15. And she goes, oh, that does change things, doesn't it?
Jessica took in Dennis's words with conflicting emotions. She liked him. She really did. And part of her still wanted Dennis at her side during the bar dance. But what would everyone say when they found out her date wasn't even old enough to drive? She could just picture the look on Lila's face.
Besides, Dennis had the nerve to keep the truth from her all these weeks. I don't think she cares that much about the lying. I think she cares that much about the 15 of it all.
For
and
sure.
the mocking of it all.
And then she's the picture of innocence as she tells him it's too late. And then she goes to the elevator before he catches up with her and sees the tears welling in her eyes. So what do you think the tears are about?
I think the tears are that she really liked him and she was hopeful for a relationship, and she's an adolescent planning her future. And so one of the things she was thinking about was maybe like a life with him, and that can't happen anymore. And so she's sad about that lost potential. What do you think?
Well, I think so too. Like my reading of this was she did, I mean, and it tells us she liked him. And so I felt that the tears were tears over the fact that like she wanted to keep dating him, but she felt like she had to now reject him because of like, otherwise Lila will do to her what she does to Lila, and that they're in this bind together that they've created, and the sort of frustration with that. But then it annoyed me that then like in the next chapter or whatever, everyone's like, well, it's like, well, I guess Jessica's over it, like Dennis who or something. So it's like, she's like on to the next thing. I'm like, well, but it did seem like she cared. So is that being undermined? I don't know. Well, we can go to it. So they're at the fucking BART race finally, blah, blah, blah. Elizabeth tells Todd Jessica finally quit the law job. And it did turn out it was because of she was doing it because of a guy. And Todd says, what happened? Did he try to take advantage of her?
So sad and gross that his mind immediately goes to like, oh, was this another sexual assault situation?
It's just, we call that Tuesday in Sweet Valley.
Yeah, seriously.
Elizabeth says, not in the way you think. And then Todd's like, well, yeah, of course she's not going to be with a younger man. And then Elizabeth's like, well, I don't know. Like, it would be humiliating for her. And then Elizabeth's like, but not me. If that happened to me, I would go out with a guy anyway, even if he was younger. I don't care what other people think. And then Todd says, well, knowing Jessica, she'll be after someone else before the day's out. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then that is what happens. She's getting ready to cheerlead for the thing. And then it says she realized getting Dennis Creighton out of her system would be much easier than she thought, because she starts to see all the high school boys coming to the stadium or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yummy, yummy.
And then next to her, and this was, as you would say, this was a line that made me feel, what's the word? My prickling on the skin. Mm. Standing as close to Jessica as possible was Annie Whitman, wearing a mini dress short enough to make her a girl watcher's delight.
Icky, icky, ick.
The phrase girl watcher.
Oh God, no, please no.
And I don't think I've heard this before, that like just as an expression, girl watcher. What I interpreted was, it's like a parallel to a bird watcher. Girl watching is an activity that people do. They watch girls and they like to see girls' bodies, and how short her dress is would make anyone who likes to engage in girl watching feel delighted.
I wonder if this song didn't make it to Canada. Do you know the song Girl Watcher?
Oh my God, no.
Girl Watcher. I'm a girl watcher.
Wait, so is that a real expression?
Girls go by.
That's a real expression?
I mean, it's definitely not like an expression that feels comfortable to use, but it definitely also is a song. Girl watcher. I'm a girl watcher. It's a catchy song, unfortunately, for an insidious little message.
Well, it's from 1968, so.
Mm-hmm. Hello there, female. My, but you do look swell. Would you please walk a little slower? I wonder if you know that you're putting on a show. Could you please walk a little closer?
Annie's very focused on cheerleading. She's watching Jessica and the cheerleaders. She's trying to go through the motions. She's really enthusiastic to try out for the cheerleading squad. What we call Pascal's gun, probably. Bruce comes out there. He's ready to go. They're all getting ready to go. And then they run. Is Tony Hispanic? He must be. His name is Tony Esteban. Yeah. You made it, amigo. Tony congratulated him. I don't feel great about that, but fine. Note that Tony was not expected to do well. I did note that. Okay. So then Roger comes out and runs after everyone thinks he's not going to run. And Lila, in a moment of Jessica inspired, like kind of going, it has echoes of when Jessica's at Bruce Patman's birthday party and Elizabeth comes up and is like, oh, so you knew about this? And she's like, well, kind of, blah, 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 blah. Lila does the same thing. I don't know how he did it, but doesn't he look great? You know, I bet he planned this whole ruse just to shock the other schools. Imagine coming up with that dumb story about a job and a mean boss. She let out a laugh. Yeah, and then she finds out Schultz isn't retiring. She's like, well, I'm still going to do the party in honor of Roger. I think also just the description of Roger when he comes out and the reveal that he's competing. All eyes to focus on the slender boy who cut a handsome figure dressed in a brand new pair of red running shorts with the white high school tank top. It was quite a change from the ragged looking figure who'd run that first race. And I was interested in it was quite a change. Because like, what has changed? Like, obviously the outfit, but has his body changed? Like, I don't think so. It's only been, a couple of weeks of training? And he's been running everywhere anyways. It's not like he's going to get in much better shape. So it's funny that we get this description of it was quite a change. It's like, it's not that much change. All right. Problematically, I now have I'm a Girl Watcher stuck in my head. So I'll be singing that all day and people just think I'm a perv. So thank you. Roger wins. Okay. Roger wins. Yeah.
They have to do 2 heats of the big Bart race. It's just like, okay, guys.
Roger had plenty to cry about during his life, but now for the first time, he felt his eyes moisten with tears of joy. Without shame, he continued to let the tears flow as he rode on the biggest high of his life.
I love it.
All right, last chapter. He tells Lila, fuck off, I'm not going to your party. He tells Liv, you're cool. He gives her a big smooch on the lips.
Lila asks him, why aren't you going to my party? And he says, frankly, it's none of your business, which I know none of your business is a very common phrase, but again, it's invoking the world of work.
Business, yeah.
Exactly. The experiences of the past week had made him realize what kind of values were truly important to him, and they didn't always come with big price tags. Lila wasn't worth another instant of his time. So just more money talk.
Nice.
And then
Jessica has a date with a cheerleader.
A male cheerleader of all things. Now I've heard everything.
Well, there's actually a Sweet Valley Twins, or it might be Unicorn Club, but there's a Sweet Valley Twins or Unicorn Club book about a boy cheerleader. So that does happen in the twin series. But yeah, there's also a boy cheerleader called Kevin, and that's going to be Jessica's next date. So Elizabeth says...
progressive, no? Is that not progressive?
Yeah, Elizabeth says, somehow I knew it wouldn't take you long to get over Dennis, and Jessica says, Dennis who? So I don't know. I just sort of... It felt like she really was sad about Dennis. I sort of wish we could have seen her actually be sad about Dennis, but... Okay, Annie is telling Jess that she's going to try out for the cheerleading squad. Jessica is not exactly warmly receiving her. Elizabeth encourages her, and Elizabeth says, good luck. And Jessica's like, why'd you do that? You know, she's not good for our reputation. She's an easy fucking slut. And Elizabeth is like, I like to see hard work rewarded. It happened for Roger. It can happen for Annie.
According to the school rules, everyone is allowed to try out, Jessica had to admit. Even easy girls like you, she almost added. Jesus. That girl's got to hold the school record for most dates, if date is the right word for what Annie does. Every single cheerleader is a public representative of our school, and it is my job to make sure they're deserving of the honor. I know this girl is just a lot of bad news. And then Jessica stops and put her hands on her hips. Liz, I don't have to do anything I don't want to do, but I'm willing to bet anything she chickens out when it comes time for tryouts. At least she should if she knows what's good for her. Annie was really in for it, Elizabeth fretted, recognizing that hard tone in Jessica's voice. She sneaked around the rules once to deny membership in her sorority to a girl she didn't like. So it wouldn't be surprising if she did something similar to Annie when it came to the cheerleading squad. Elizabeth saw nothing but trouble ahead for the shapely, unsuspecting Annie Whitman. Big trouble. What trouble is in store for Annie? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 10, Wrong Kind of Girl.
And are you interested in continuing?
I mean, I am terrified about the terrible messages that are going to come from a book called Wrong Kind of Girl, but I'm obviously going to keep going.
Wonderful.
I guess this is where I leave you. We didn't fuck, marry, or kill anybody this book.
Okay, fuck, marry, kill. Yeah, so you have to at once imagine that you're age appropriate for a teenager and then imagine you're age appropriate for an adult. Sorry, I know it's complicated. All right, so fuck, marry, kill. Ned, Roger, or the other one, Bruce.
I'm
fucking Ned, killing Bruce, marry Roger.
Fucking Ned, killing Roger, marrying Bruce, divorcing Bruce, living on that sweet, sweet, sweet alimony. Suck it, Bruce.
No, what we're really going to want to do is get pregnant with Bruce's child, then divorce Bruce. Because Bruce is going to have an airtight prenup, okay? We need that child.
I'm not signing a prenup.
Well, I don't think the Patmans of Sweet Valley are going to exactly be okay with that, but...
I mean, I also, unfortunately... Rebecca, not all of us can get pregnant with Bruce's baby. Not all of us can bear a fictional child.
Robert, why do you freaking think I said we instead of you? Because we're in this together. It will be a team effort. I would do it.
I'm married to him, and I get
we're sister wives. We're sister.
Oh, we're sister wives. Sorry.
No, you and me are.
Well, that's better than me having to harvest his semen and then inseminate it into you, which seems messy at the very least.
We should start incorporating the concept of sister wives as an option into fuck, marry, kill, because it actually changes stuff. You know what I mean? If you have someone to bear the burden of the husband.
Yeah, I think that makes it not fair, because what that just means is we would hang out with each other, you and me, while we palled around in Fowler Crest or whatever the name of where Bruce lives, Patman Crest or what have you.
Wait, what is it called? Patman.
One Mansion One, maybe?
I don't know.
Oh, you didn't like that?
It might just be I don't know what it is.
Can I stop recording?
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Sweet Valley Hive, hosted by Robert Marks and Rebecca Pardo. For more, check out our Instagram at Sweet Valley Hive. Theme song by Yessie and artwork by Elliot Carroll.